Okay, let's dive in. When you think about love, what usually comes to mind, I mean, for most of us, right, it's this big feeling, something that kind of happens to you. Often it's all about romance, powerful, emotional, maybe a bit chaotic.
That's definitely the common picture, isn't it? Love as this feeling you fall into. Very focused on internal states, often that really intense romantic thing.
But the sources we're looking at today, they take a really different approach. We're digging into a theory that sort of flips that whole idea around. It's called the DASBIEN theory from psychologist Andy Kid Figueroa Cárdenas.
Right, and the really radical part is how it defines love. Not as a feeling at all, but as a deliberate action you can actually see. The core idea, love is giving something good.
Giving something good. Okay, sounds straightforward enough, maybe too straightforward. But where it gets really interesting, according to these sources, is who decides what's good. It's not the giver.
Exactly. That's the absolute key. What counts as good is defined entirely by the person receiving the action. It forces you, really, to step outside your own ideas, your own good intentions even, and focus completely on what the other person actually sees as helpful or needed for them.
So the mission for this deep dive, using these sources, is to really unpack that connection. How does this action-focused, receiver-defined love relate to our mental health, our well-being?
Well, it suggests something pretty powerful. If love is an action, it's something you can actually learn, a skill you can practice and get better at.
So it's not just something you hope for, it's something you can do. Gives you a sense of agency, maybe.
Precisely. It offers a kind of practical roadmap for interacting constructively, and that definitely ties into mental health. The sources cover the basics, the how-to, and, the bigger picture stuff, too.
Okay, let's start there then. If love is this action giving something good based on the receiver, how does the theory actually break that down? Like, what are the essential parts?
Yeah, the sources lay out 4 key elements. Think of them as the necessary building blocks for any act of love in this DASBIEN framework. They have to be there for this giving good to happen.
Okay, walk us through them.
So, first, you need someone or something doing the giving. The theory calls this the sender. Could be a person, a group, maybe even an organization.
Right, the one starting the giving good. Got it.
Then, naturally, there's the one receiving it, the receiver.
Yeah.
And like we said, this is the crucial one because their perspective defines what's actually good in that moment.
Their view is paramount.
Okay.
Receiver defines the good.
That's it. Third element is the activity. That's the specific action itself, the giving love part, what the sender is actually intentionally doing for the receiver.
The doing part, the concrete behavior.
Exactly. And number 4 is the situation, basically the context, everything surrounding the action, the social setting, emotional states, the physical place. It all influences how the action is performed and, importantly, how it's received.
Okay, so the context really shapes whether something lands as good.
Oh, absolutely. Those 4, sender, receiver, activity, situation, they give you the basic structure. But then to understand how you actually perform that activity, that giving good effectively, the sources bring in this model. It's called the Triángulo del Amar, the triangle of loving.
A triangle. So like 3 key points you need.
Exactly. It's presented as a process, really. 3 connected steps you need for the loving action to actually work, meaning to be seen as good by the receiver.
Okay, what are they?
The first one is Subjectivize, and this one's maybe the most critical, especially thinking about mental health. It means the sender has to make a real conscious effort to understand the receiver's inner world. Their feelings, their specific needs at that moment, their unique viewpoint on what good actually means for them.
So it's not just guessing based on your own life. It's actively trying to see things through their eyes. That sounds a lot like empathy.
It is, fundamentally. And the sources really emphasize this connection, trying to understand someone else's perspective. That empathy builds trust. It builds strong, healthy relationships. It's how you figure out what good actually is for that person.
Okay, step 1. Really get their perspective. Subjectivize. What's the next point on the triangle?
Second is intentional. This is the conscious action the sender takes. Based on what they understood for Subjectivize, it's the deliberate act of giving that specific good.
So it's not just random kindness. It's a choice, a purposeful behavior.
Right. It highlights that voluntary aspect. Love isn't just washing over you. You are choosing to act. And this ties into altruism, doing things for others. The sources point to loads of research showing the strong link between acting altruistically and feeling better yourself, that helper's high idea.
So intentionally giving something good defined by them can actually boost your own well-being, too.
Definitely. Engaging in that kind of kindness, it literally activates reward centers in the brain. It can boost your mood, your self-esteem, give you a sense of purpose.
Okay, so you understand their needs, subjectivizer. You act intentionally, intentional. What's the third corner of the triangle?
That last one is retroalimentation, feedback. This is where the sender actively checks back with the receiver. Did that action actually land as good from their point of view?
You don't just do the thing and assume it worked. You need to, close the loop, check in.
Exactly. You close the loop. Did it meet their definition? This needs open communication, maybe some vulnerability, but it also strengthens the connection, validates the receiver's experience. Feeling seen, feeling valued, that's huge for mental well-being, and this feedback step reinforces that.
It really does sound like something you could practice, something you could improve on. The sources even mention things like degrees and levels of love, suggesting you can almost, measure it. How does that fit in?
Yeah, those concepts help make it more, let's say, empirical within the theory. Degrees basically refers to quantity or frequency. How often are these acts of love happening? Levels, on the other hand, is about the complexity or depth. Is it a simple, concrete act or something more abstract, more profound in terms of support?
Okay, so maybe giving someone a glass of water when they ask, that's a concrete act, lower level maybe. But doing that consistently for an elderly parent, that's a higher degree. And maybe understanding their deeper loneliness and just sitting with them, that's a higher level, more complex.
That's a really good way to think about it. It shows how this framework lets you analyze love, not just as this vague idea, but through actual observable actions, how often they happen and how intricate they are.
And the sources talk about 3 directions love can move in, right?
Well,
receiving, giving, and there's a third one.
Yes, exactly. There's giving love to others, receiving love from others, and then really importantly, giving love to our own being.
Giving love to yourself, that feels really central.
It absolutely is. The sources really stress this self-directed part as being essential for, personal growth and mental health. It lines up almost perfectly with the idea of self-compassion in psychology, treating yourself with kindness, with understanding, especially when things are tough.
And the connection between self-compassion and mental health is pretty solid, based on the sources.
Oh, definitely. The research they mention links self-compassion pretty clearly to less anxiety, less depression, less loneliness, and being more resilient. By framing self-care as giving good to your own being, DASBIEN offers a kind of concrete way to think about and practice self-compassion, which is a huge buffer for mental health. It suggests it's not selfish, it's necessary.
So practicing these DASBIEN ideas isn't just about your relationships with other people. It's also fundamentally about your relationship with yourself.
Exactly. Building that self-compassion, giving good to yourself, it builds your internal resources, makes you better able to handle challenges, and also, frankly, better able to genuinely give good to others. It's sort of a positive cycle.
That feels really relevant today, with all the talk about loneliness and social isolation being such big issues. The sources mention this too.
They do. Loneliness is tied to some serious health risks, like higher rates of anxiety, depression. The sources point to things like, changes in family life, maybe technology playing a role in that isolation.
And DASBIEN, because it focuses so much on that intentional connection defined by the receiver, it seems almost designed to push back against that isolation.
Precisely. By giving you a way to think about deliberate, meaningful interaction, the giving good part, and making sure it lands well through feedback, the theory actively promotes building and strengthening social ties. It gives you something tangible to do about connection.
Right. It shifts the focus maybe from just feeling lonely to actively taking steps that build relationships.
It gives you that practical roadmap we talked about, that sense of agency, feeling like you can actually do something to improve things. That in itself is a powerful antidote to the helplessness that can come with mental health struggles.
And looking beyond just one-on-one relationships, the sources suggest DASBIEN might have wider implications for society.
Yeah, the argument is that these principles could scale up,
Yeah.
potentially influencing collective well-being. The theory points out some modern challenges, like maybe an overfocus on consumerism, that can kind of work against this giving good for the benefit of others or the community.
Yeah, the sources brought up research connecting materialism with lower life satisfaction and more anxiety, which is a stark contrast to the well-being that comes from altruism and real connection.
Exactly. They report findings that suggest consumer culture can foster more superficial ties, maybe even negative feelings about the environment, which all impacts well-being. DASBIEN, by defining good through the receiver's well-being instead of just acquiring stuff, offers a different value system, based purely on what the sources present.
And the theory also hints that these principles could help build social solidarity, rebuild trust.
It does suggest that. The sources link social solidarity with better health outcomes in communities. They also note this trend of declining trust in institutions and connect lower trust with negative social and mental health effects. So by encouraging intentional giving good and focusing on the receiver's well-being, the theory sketches a possible path toward interactions that might foster more trust and cohesion.
And it's not just theoretical, right? The sources mention it's actually being applied.
Yes, they mention a foundation working to promote it, and even a course teaching love as a skill, which really underlines the idea that DASBIEN is seen as something teachable, something practical you can use, not just an academic concept.
Which brings us right back to where we started, really. Love is a skill you can learn and apply.
Exactly. Its structured approach, those elements, and the triangle makes it potentially useful in different settings aimed at improving relationships and mental health.
Okay, so this offers a really compelling framework. But the sources are also clear about a significant challenge, right? A tricky area that needs more thought.
Yes, and this is a really important point to grapple with. The challenge comes up when you stick rigidly to giving something good, defined by the receiver, but what if what the receiver thinks is good is actually harmful? Harmful to themselves, maybe harmful to others, unethical, in the longer run.
Right, this is that complexity we touched on. The sources give examples like enabling someone's addiction because they say it feels good, or going along with unhealthy relationship patterns.
Exactly. If the receiver's perception is the absolute only factor determining good, how do you handle situations where their perceived good actually causes damage? The sources acknowledge this is a limitation, or at least an area needing more nuance within the theory.
It raises that tough question. How do you balance respecting their subjective view with potential objective harm?
It really does. And the sources flag it as a key area for the theory to evolve, to make sure it stays healthy and helpful across different complex situations. They also mention needing more research on things like cultural differences, better ways to measure this stuff, long-term studies, and refining how it's taught.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive, a really different lens for thinking about something as basic as love.
Yeah, the DASBIEN theory offers that unique, actionable view. Love as giving something good, with the crucial twist that it's defined by the receiver.
And its structure, those four elements, and especially the Triángulo del Amar with its steps. Subjectivize, intentional, and retroalimentation. It gives you a kind of practical process for doing it.
And we've talked about how those pieces line up pretty well with things known to support mental health, fostering empathy, acting altruistically, building strong bonds, and maybe most importantly, practicing self-compassion by giving good to ourselves.
The sources also point to its wider relevance, offering a critique of consumerism from their perspective and suggesting potential for building social connection and trust, linking individual well-being to community health.
And the fact that, according to the sources, it's being taught and applied suggests it's viewed as more than just an idea. It's seen as a practical, learnable skill.
So love, through this DASBIEN lens, becomes something you can actively work on, a tangible way to potentially improve your relationships, and by extension, your mental health, shifting from just a feeling to an intentional action.
It really empowers you, doesn't it? It makes you an active player in the quality of your connections.
So to leave you, our listener, with a final thought to mull over drawing from the sources, the theory places huge importance on defining good from the receiver's viewpoint. But given that challenge the sources raise, what do you do when the receiver's perceived good might actually be harmful? How could you navigate that tension, that fundamental conflict, while still trying to genuinely give good? That seems like a really powerful question to sit with.